Reality is for the strong of heart. That's why most people avoid it. This lucid statement comes from alternative writer, researcher, and spiritual warrior Zen Gardner. Zen is a man who, despite the tumult of this world, insists that a positive awakening is occurring right before our very eyes and souls. His words of wisdom, energy, and passion have assisted thousands of individuals on their own journey of truth. I had the pleasure of meeting Zen only a few weeks prior to the recording of this interview, in which we spent over 3 hours discussing all of the dimensions of this world and beyond. I can't think of one subject that we didn't cover, but at the end of the day, we agreed these are unprecedented times, and we are all bearing witness to this shift firsthand. As we arrive at the fork in the road, humanity will undoubtedly be faced with a critical choice as to which path that we will ultimately take. Zen Gardner, it is such a pleasure to have you on Higher Journeys Radio today. And although this is our first time talking as interviewer and guest, I want us to continue in the same spirit of conversation that you and I had just last week when we managed to stay on the phone talking about everything under the sun for over 3 hours, I think it was. Yeah, what an extraordinary. That was just absolutely a pleasure for me. It was just great.
Me as well.
Yeah, so welcome.
Well, Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
And it's really wonderful to meet you, Alexis.
Likewise. Well, we know we said offline that this is obviously maybe our first visit in this incarnation, but certainly not the first of our relationship, I think, our friendship. So.
Right. No, I think you're right.
Yeah. Well, listen, I suppose there's so many things that we could talk about. And just before we went on air, we couldn't help but talk about this little thing that occurred yesterday called the supermoon lunar eclipse, also referred to as the blood moon. And just for the record for our audience, we're recording this interview on September 28th, 2015. So last night, this thing happened called the blood moon. It hasn't been witnessed for 33 years, I believe. That's an interesting number,
right,
too. 33. Did you see it? Did you see the blood moon?
I did. We got a really clear picture of it here. I'm down in Uruguay, and it's we had an overcast as it was starting to pass through the phases, and I thought, oh darn! But all of a sudden, the sky just went completely clear, and we got to see it just perfectly clear. And it was something else.
Sure was, yeah. And I think we both said we've never seen this before, not with my own eyes. So this was indeed rare. Well, as we know, some in the alternative community, speaking of this event, some in the alternative community, even some in the more mainstream religions have attached such a powerful significance to this rare event. Everything from sudden DNA upgrades to the all-out annihilation of the planet. And although we are still somewhat in this full moon cycle as we speak, no one, I suspect, has seen any acute transition. Certainly not the end of the earth, because obviously we're talking right now. But what were your thoughts, Zen, if any, on the significance of this rare blood moon?
Well, as you probably know, it's the fourth of a series of these. It's called a tetra, and which is also very rare. Although those do happen, but not in this sort of each one having this sort of profound appearance. It's interesting. I've been thinking about this quite a bit because, people were talking about the Shemitah this month and all these converging events and the Pope at the UN and the imminent financial collapse, all of which are very real factors. And I believe a lot of Christians thought the rapture was going to be on the 23rd. I mean, people got very specific. And when that hype builds up, it sort of berays itself. It exposes itself for what it is. It's interesting. Alan Watts talks about something called a fascination for doom that humanity tends to have, and it gets fixated and it loses track. It's like when when we pay attention to something, we notice what we concentrate on, and what's in the background tends to be sort of a blurry, other type of information, but we concentrate on what interests us, and we lose the perspective in our concentration. We lose the fact that all this duality is part of the picture, and it all fits together. There's all that esoteric understanding of the nature of reality, but really they call it Gestalt psychology. This is what they studied. They learned about this method that humans tend to have in concentrating and focusing on what's moving, what's in the foreground, what catches their attention. So even though we can be in a room of people and our inner consciousness can notice every detail, you won't remember it all. Not all of it will go into your consciousness. You'll remember what you focused on. And to me, that is it's kind of a transcendental thought, but it points back to this fascination for doom. We focus on these potential cataclysmic events, and it almost creates a vortex. I mean, it's as you know, whatever we concentrate on, we give our attention to, we're empowering. So it's even though the alternative community is pointing out so many things which are real, evidence for potential false flags and things we need to keep track of, the tendency can be to get in the wrong vibration about it and in some sense contribute to the lower vibrational frequencies that are running amok here, rather than contributing to the higher vibrational changes, which are all the more thrilling and all the more empowering. And this doom fascination, I think, is something that people need to be aware of to a deeper extent. I think we all are. Anybody who's been studying these aspects, for many years, like most of us, we're aware of it. But it's in the alternative community. I think there's a lot of newly awakened people arriving in the alternative community, and that's a wonderful thing. But a lot of them are very fresh, very young, and I don't know if I'd say unseasoned, but just learning. And if you remember when you're discovering all these things at the beginning, it's just overwhelming.
Overwhelming, that's right.
You're going from Nibiru and reptilians to I don't, whether it's the Fed or the Anunnaki or the bloodlines or all this stuff. This information floods in, and it's pretty dark stuff, and it rocks people's psyches. And the internet's kind of like it's like the Wild West for information, and the tendency of new people, not in every case, but is to let it it knocks you all around. Like a swimmer's first time at the beach, you don't know how to handle the waves. You got to learn how to ride the waves. You got to learn how to get in there and swim past the big ones, and don't swim near the coral, and things like that. And it takes a little experience. And I don't mean to put down people who are just coming on the scene, but I think this is contributing to that sense of confusion or disruption that a lot of us old timers are kind of sensing. It's coming up through the ranks in the so-called alternative community, which is, even that term is starting to wear a little thin, I think. But,
I agree with you. Yeah.
But these are dynamics that everybody's tracking, and some people are getting pretty ticked off about it and almost contributing to it by being angry, and they're screaming out disinfo agents, and
that's right.
Starting to point fingers, and that kind of stuff starts. That's when we just have to go, wait a minute, everybody chill here, because the whole point of the awakening, as you and I have been talking about quite a bit, is tapping into and contributing to this raising of the vibrational level of humanity, the planet, and the morphic field, that we are contributing to the call it positive effect and empowerment. And that takes, like I was just saying, it takes some navigating. It takes some learning how to swim. It takes some effort. You just don't go with the flow. You've got to really learn how to direct your boat. Like I use that analogy a lot in my writing about sailing the cosmic seas. We're out there, and well, first of all, you got to push off from the shore and be willing to venture out there. And it's lonely, and it can be a little scary at first, but then, and like that other expression I like to use, that the rudder can't take effect until the boat is in motion. Because a lot of people are sitting at home trying to decide what to do. Well, just get started is what I'll say. Just do something, and your boat might be going one way, but the rudder, the thing that's going to steer your way, which is much deeper than your conscious self, can take effect, and it'll start taking you where you're supposed to go, and you'll have those new worlds to explore and conquer.
Oh, it's beautifully said. Yeah.
But it's out in that ship and learning to sail these high seas. Like they call them uncharted seas, uncharted seas for a reason, because none of us had been there before. And on top of that, the climate of the planet right now is in this huge confrontation between these wonderful new vibrations coming at us that so many of us are sensing, and many have talked about for a long time, versus these lower vibrational entities that are making their last-ditch stand to grab control. And and amongst them, there are those who realize this vibrational empowerment is happening, and they're trying to fight it, which a lot of people are talking about. Maybe that's what the chemtrails are about. Maybe that's what CERN is about, directed energy to fight off what's coming. I don't know, but the point is that dynamic is confrontational, yet our greatest weapon is transcendence. It is not fighting on their plane. It is rising up above to where we belong. And if we get down there and dip into their low dimensional conflict and all the negativity, even in such things as conflicts within the alternative media, we're submitting ourselves and thus empowering.
Absolutely.
Submitting ourselves to and empowering the very thing all of us are trying to shirk and see dispelled on this planet, so we can have peace.
Right. Oh, that was so beautifully said. And if you could see me, I'm nodding my head voraciously because I do agree. Everything that you have said is so true. I mean, this is a tumultuous time and a brilliant time at the same time, this sort of dichotomy that you and I spent a lot of time talking about. And I agree with you, Zen. I think that there are so many people, often younger people, who are coming into this, we sort of overuse the term, I think, awakening, but nonetheless, and all that comes with it, the dark, the light, and everything in between. But the dark, again, as you said, when you start to get into all the nuances of what that dark entails, you get into the research, you get into all the information that's available there, you're going to get pissed off. I mean, you're just going to be like, what? And then, chances are you're going to get pretty frustrated and then angry, particularly for those who are going through the struggles that may be realizing are due to these dark forces. So it can, in a sense, swallow you up vibrationally. And I agree. I think there needs to be a temperament. I think go ahead and get angry once you are exposed to some of these things. Get angry, get it out of your system, and then move on to the other side, which is equally, if not more powerful. I think that balance is really the challenge that a lot of people have yet to take on, frankly. So I think that was beautifully said. Well,
there's a place for righteous indignation.
Sure, there is.
I blow off steam all the time because it's got to piss you off. Even if you're aware of what's going on and why it's being done. And there's nothing wrong with that. People get this idea of spirituality as some kind of ethereal, serial place of constant om on the range, and it's a flighty idea, but that's mental. That's an idea. That's a projection. That's false learning from previous conceptions. We have to let all that go. And I'm not promoting anger, but there is a good form of anger. It's righteous anger, and there's nothing wrong with it. But the way you can tell if it's righteous is if it's helping you do something productive in the right direction. It's not just blowing off steam or attacking, tearing everything up in sight. As you well know. I think it was Naomi Wolf that said, well, it's been attributed to her, but I've seen other names. But she said the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off.
That's right. I've heard that before. I don't
know isn't that perfect?
It is absolutely perfect, and I think it's a very natural reaction. Yeah,
it is. There's nothing wrong with it. People have this guilt, but all that again is previous programming. It's previous conditioning of what is right and what is wrong. What's that built on? It's built on social conditioning, social engineering, which is false. So that's where consciousness comes in. It's realizing we can let go of all those things, which is pretty freaky. I have to admit, it's freaky to just say, wait a minute. And one of the ways to identify it that I find extremely empowering, and I'm sure you do too, is the language.
We talked about that. That's right. Yeah, sure did.
The use of language and what words mean. Say I'm killing time, or I'm, expressions that are just off the charts wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a word in Spanish, trabajo, which means work, but it means, tra and bajo is down. And so, a friend of mine, she uses a different word. Instead of down, it says up. Mm-hmm. But words have, tremendous power to either do good or to reinforce the old and do damage. Mm-hmm. And but I think people should really take the time to study language, look at the Phoenician roots, look at all these amazing. It's codified, and English is a very crude language. We've been handed a real trip of a crippled tool, and that's why I like to use language and vocabulary in my writing. And I really look for the words that express, as best of my ability, what I'm really trying to say. And people will say, "Wait a minute, man, you're using words I don't understand." Well, I'll say, "Well, look them up."
That's right. I get that too.
They deliberately lessened the vocabulary.
Yeah, I think for sure that has been part of the programming. Well, again, in our 3+ hour talk, we covered language, and not just you're absolutely right, the English language is just chock full of innuendos that are derived from things that are not necessarily, first of all, as we know in the English language, one word can have so many different meanings, so we need to look at the history. I've always found the language in general just fascinating, and I agree that particularly when you see newer words being introduced into what I call the societal vernacular, people have heard me say this before, how I just loathe the term, not love, loathe, selfie, foodie, junkie, man cave. When you and of course these are words that are actually showing up in the dictionary now, but the fact, Zen, that so many people are parroting so quickly, the proliferation of these words that are introduced into society, and not only words but inflections, you and I talked about that, really speaks even beyond the words itself, but speaks to the fact that people are too anxious to copy rather than invent themselves. So there's a lot of I think language has been used in many cases as a weapon, and also I think as a test to see the resilience or lack thereof of people. As you know, I grew up with a mother that was an educator, and she was absolutely adamant that I used proper English. Sure, we all have our little words, little expressions that we use, but coming back to the fact that you said, some of the words that you use, people say, "Well, I don't understand what that means." Well, look it up. That's absolutely right. We've lost that. So very well said.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on,
I mean, talk about freaky terms. How about the selfie stick?
Oh my goodness!
When I first heard that term,
yeah,
I almost punched something.
Yeah.
It's like, are you, and people, "Oh no, it's a great idea. I use one too. I got one too. And look, you can hold it up,
I know.
take your picture anywhere." And that's not the point. The point is, people are responding, this language thing, they're responding to a meme. They're responding to a wave of social conditioning.
That's right.
that has been produced, that most people have no idea has been created deliberately and propagated. I mean, they also use what we respond to, what we don't respond to. It's not like this will be the way and you shall adopt it. No, they look what works and they modify accordingly. When I grew up during the hippie generation, and there was all this wild clothing and innovative ideas that were just coming out of all kinds of crazy places. Well, by the time that the later 70s and 80s came around, you had people like Peter Max, it was all popularized. Dick Cavett wearing bell bottoms, and they were quick to take it and commercialize it, and it succeeded. Yeah. I mean, as you know, they hijacked the whole awakening thing, and besides the fact that it was the CIA that introduced all the drugs anyway to see if they could use it for a mind control tool, but as we know, it backfired, as all their actions do. And they accomplish on one hand, but boy, it backfired big on another side, which is always the case. Just like now, the this clampdown of the Matrix. Well, it's backfiring because people. I know a lot of people who've lost everything in the crash, and that's what woke them up. And now they're going, "That's the best thing that ever happened." I mean, it happened to us. I think I told you our story, and I was getting tripped off trying to get some funds put away, and we've got a lot of kids and grandkids, and I was trying to do the responsible thing, whereas I've been on the road for 25 years, just winging it all over the world. I said, okay, and we had an opportunity, and then everything blew up, and it was such a relief. It was just, it's a shame. I mean, I'm just living day to day now, but I don't mind. I'm free. That's the point, But
Yeah.
the matrix works against itself. That's one of the reasons people are waking up. If it takes, I tell this to a lot of people, if it takes all this calamity and all this pressure and all this craziness for people to go, wait a minute, what's going on? And they snap out of their coma. Well, so be it. If that's what it takes, so be it. I mean, we're all given chances all our lives with little hints, and some people get a real special calling through a car accident or a near-death experience, or a Kundalini experience, a drug experience. People they wake up from all vectors, but in the grander scheme, where we do need numbers, because the critical mass issue is very important to the awakening. And so we need, it has to be organic, real, and it has to be by choice. But look at the pressures that people are being put under. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that people see it in a positive context, because the awakening is going to happen one way or the other. And it's sort of like that famous saying, don't be attached to the outcome. People ask me all the time, what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be okay? I said, you know what? It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. It's what you're supposed to do. Are you responding? Am I responding? Are we helping others learn to respond, or encouraging them, or opening their eyes to help them respond? That's all that matters in our lives, is what each of us do. Mm-hmm. When people look out for the big picture and expect the whole thing to change, change the world, what can I do? Well, you can do everything.
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi didn't start off, I'm going to go change the world. I'm going to go through this transformation and that, and then I'm going to go to India and overthrow the British. He just followed his heart. He had conviction, took one step at a time, and one thing led to another. Right. He's just a man. Yeah. He's one person. Martin Luther King, any of these amazing pioneers of courage who were fearless in their lives, which everybody should be. I mean, to me, that's the key to all of this, is fearlessness. What the world lacks is courage. There's a lack of courage. People are just too easily buffed about by all this stuff and worried about their own damn asses. And I'm going off, but
keep going.
It's a very individual decision.
Sure it is.
And it starts with each of us. The awakening is you. The awakening is me. Mm-hmm. And we can't escape that reality. And that's what people tend to do. We tend to broadcast it out there. We want to share the burden, or join a movement or follow a leader. Mm-hmm. That's such bullshit. That's what's disempowered humanity up to this very moment.
And it continues. And look, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk briefly about the visit of the Pope in the last 6 days. And honestly, Zen, and there's people know the show is really, it's about being uplifting and speaking positively. And I don't like naming names. I don't think it's even necessary when we can just get into concepts. But I couldn't help but really notice, never mind the Pope being here and what he said, but the fact that so many people were so willing, you talk about following the leader and pouring their souls, all of that energy into one flesh and blood human being because they were told to. Now, I know you want to go off on that one. I was really just cut to the quick. And we've seen this time and time again, this indoctrination into adoration and idolization and icon, which sounds a little bit like what? I'm not going to go there, but it really just, to me, this is a barometer to show, at least, well, we're seeing this on television, of course, and I've actually surveyed some neighbors to see what they thought, and they kind of thought all this, saying, oh, he is just he's changed my world, and I'm going to do exactly what he says. What about what you're feeling, separate and apart from this incessant need to follow another? To me, that is probably one of the biggest and most integral steps in evolution, is understanding the innate power within us without the need to follow another. Right? Well, Zen, we're back. We had a little bit of a disruption of technology. Some people call it the gremlins in the machine. I find it interesting that these gremlins tend to show up when we get into the real juicy stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, it happens. It's probably happened 6 times in the last 3 weeks of interviews. It's
Oh
or
boy.
4 weeks, but hey, it's a good sign.
Good sign nonetheless. And this is a good interview, and it's a good discussion. We'll continue. We were talking about the papal visit, and I want to just say for the record, I thought much of what he was quoted as saying did have value. That's not the issue. The issue for me was the fact that so many people were so willing to follow it as we see these things. The pomp and circumstance was quite disturbing to me. This idolization that, obviously this is a thing that's more prevalent in the Western world of idolizing others, while saying, we talk about people who are so down on themselves at this point that they refer to themselves as Joe Public, or I'm just an average Joe, I'm a nobody. Why? Because they have poured all of their energy into the person that they think is somebody. That, of course, has been a teaching that has to be undone. This is also a critical part of the awakening. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it's all over the world. Every culture has this problem.
Probably because so many people.
Well, I mean, look at people either abdicate to religious figures or figures of authority, and they submit, and unquestioningly, sometimes they're pounded into submission. But it's a learned behavior over the centuries. But I was going to say, the whole idea of religion, or any of these things, is when people give away their individual authority to something. They're looking for a savior. They're looking for an answer. I mean, obviously the world's a mess. I mean, this whole thing's a setup, as you know. He's coming along with this big solution. And because the part of this world government they're going to construct, the most important element's the religious one, in my opinion. The control system is just the backbone, the shell, because they need people's allegiance and directed energy. And they need to dissolve their allegiance to other religions, other leaders, other religious figures, and centralize it, which the Catholic Church is masterful at. I mean, that's the most abusive, wouldn't even call it organization. It's the Church of Babylon. It's nothing less. It's the same story from sun worship. You see it in all their symbols and all this stuff. It's the same religion passed down through millennia. But it's the backbone of it, or something like it, or something's going to morph, is going to be the backbone of this new world globalist system that they're trying to maneuver into place. And but this giving away of authority, that's the root. When people want someone else to do the job that they themselves didn't have the guts to contribute to or help formulate or just be the answer themselves, somebody else comes in with a solution and we're going to follow them. It's that abdication. It's a reflex. And like you said, Joe Public and all that. You want to hear something really weird? The Pope is releasing a rock album.
No, I did
this
not
is true.
that.
This is in Rolling Stone magazine. I'll send you the link.
Oh boy!
But it's completely nuts. He's going to do like these voice things. He's going to do these talks, and they're going to use light rock and all different kinds of modes of music, and has in several languages. And they're going to release this thing. I mean, wow. It's like I was thinking he should call it "Rock the Flock" or Poop-Pourri or something. I don't know.
Man,
it's insane. But here's the issue that really, really, really hurts my heart. He's going for the youth, and these are the kids who are not armed. My generation, you're younger than me, but older generations. We've been through a lot. We have some historical background. We know where this thing came from. They have not. A lot of these kids were born with chemtrails. They were born with an iPad in their hand or something similar. These kids are almost defenseless. Have you seen this thing? What's it called? Tomorrowland. These concerts going on.
I've heard of it. I'm not that familiar.
You've got to look at it.
Tell us about that. What is?
Well, it is as a cult. It's a kind of a rave. They've been having them, I guess, every year. But there's one going on in Georgia right now. I think it's in Atlanta. Oh no, it was some town in Georgia. It's right on the 33rd parallel, of course. But you just look it up. I'll send you some links. But look up Tomorrowland Festival, and you will not. Or type in Tomorrowland Festival Occult or Tomorrowland Festival Illuminati, and it'll come up with all the heavy alternative viewpoints. But you'll see these summaries of the symbolism and the message and the abject giving away of energy to this massively financed stage production. It's not so much the bands, but when you see these monstrous figures and these speaking screens and the theme, they open the book at the beginning, and it's got all this occult thing. It says, enter in, and you will learn great wisdom. And it's absolute sorcery, just like Madonna at the halftime show. They're coming out more and more, and these kids are defenseless. And I'm just hoping that kids in their own generation will rise up and help wake up their own generation, because it's hard for them to listen to older people, but they're in their own milieu. You know, they're swimming in their own pond. So it's very, I guess we just need to drop a water cleaner in it so they can actually see what's going on.
Right. True that, as they say. Well, let's think about there are some trends that are going on, Zen. I think that, I don't even like the word trend, but we'll call it that. Things that are proliferating, catching on, that do have, not to mention the alternative media, some of the content within alternative media, and the discussions therein, but other things like, what's it called? The flash mob. I don't know if that's yesterday, now that we're into the tomorrow land, was that just yesterday? But what do you think about that trend and what it's evoking in the public consciousness? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I think that's a dynamite.
Yeah.
Dynamite thing. I'm working with something called the Full Circle Project with Max Egan and a few others, and it's that's one of the ideas I had that we could encourage people locally to use. For example, in England, there are people getting kicked out of their homes, older people, because they can't pay their light bill or something like that. I mean, horrific treatment. And neighbors are coming together and preventing the police from doing anything. And in Ireland, this thing with the water meters and what they're trying to do to privatize the water, and I mean, absolute abusive behaviors. Scotland's got its issues. The States is just swimming in all kinds of abuses, freedom abuses, and unfortunately, we're not seeing people stand up on a local level. But the idea of the Full Circle Project is to put people in touch with each other, get them talking, and help them identify, or encourage them. It's not a leadership thing, but be a catalyst and a connecting hub, and encourage them to get in touch with each other, identify the issues that are the most urgent that they need to confront, as well as constructive actions, be it organic farming or permaculture projects or building communities or some people are they're planting organic food throughout their cities and making them a tourist attraction. So a lot of brilliant ideas going on. But putting people in touch with each other to where they can be able to respond. And if it's local like that, well, they can't stamp us out. There's no central leader. It's all local. Whereas people are looking for some big movement and some flashy leader who's going to say, this is the way, come with me. And
which is how it's always been, right?
Yeah, but the dynamic has changed, how you started this out. This is one of the really encouraging things. Yeah. People are feeling that stirring inside of them. And I think this has tremendous potential. And I mean, it's happening already. It's not like universe is working. People are getting together. People are forming communities. People are encouraging each other. But this is where the flash mob thing came in, because I thought, well, you've got a big enough email list, and like how the flash mob works, and you say, listen, everybody show up at the mall. We're going to do a demonstration. Bring this, bring that, and get ready to dance to this song, or just shout this word over and over, or just be there. But, that flash mob response system is such a great dynamic. I mean, I moved to tears. I'm sure you are too.
Absolutely.
It's just thrilling when I watch those. I'm just weeping like a baby. I mean, that's the expression that we're longing to see, and we don't see enough of it.
Yeah. So all of these things are sort of permeating our culture at the same time. My audience is probably tired of me using the term dichotomy of consciousness, which is a chapter in my book, Conscious Musings, the dichotomy of consciousness and the precipice of change. And that was a very powerful chapter for me to write because it is so in your face. All of what we're talking about really is representative of that dichotomy, polar opposites that are, as I've said, sort of duking it out until perhaps those lines of demarcation are blurred and a new reality emerges that is far more nurturing and evolutionary than we've ever seen before. Well, I knew we were going to go off on a tangent. I knew this wasn't going to be hard to do because we did it a few days ago offline. But before we go, I mean, this is all related, obviously, but I have been really wanting to ask you this sort of on the tail end of, we left the blood moon thing a while ago, but I wanted to ask you, Zen, there has been such a sense of foreboding. And again, this is a little negative, but it's a very interesting dynamic in people. I've heard, in the last several weeks or so, that people have been really unsettled. I'll be honest, me as well. Mm-hmm. And I always try to survey the territory, if you will. I tend to be someone who's somewhat energetically sensitive. I can go into a room and pick up on a vibe, and I'll either feel really good or not so good. A lot of people are that way. But lately, I have sensed, as well as others I've talked to, that there is literally something out of kilter. I just had this discussion with Dr. Lori Nadell, who I interviewed my last interview, and she agreed. The feelings that tend to precipitate, or not precipitate, but come before something big. And maybe the big isn't a bad thing. It's just it's a major shift. How are you feeling? Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah, I do, and I sense it too. It's for real. I mean, what I wasn't trying to be Pollyanna about saying, this sense of doom. The fixation on doom is all that's at play. That's a separate dynamic to this sense of foreboding, because we are on the verge of a financial collapse that the world, I think, to a degree, the world's never seen. And the real danger lies in the interconnectivity of everything. When I was a kid, I remember reading there was at least 2 to 3 months of food available in storage places and all over the place, that if there was a calamity, there was food around. Now it's all on demand. It's immediate. You only get stuff when you immediately need it. So if, let's say, something happened and the truck stopped running, there's only 2 to 3 days of food available for people. Large cities would be in chaos within days. If there was large power grid outages, without sewage, the interdependency of these large cities is incredibly dangerous. And people have grown very complacent about it, and just assuming it's always going to be this way. I've got my 4x4, man. I've got my truck. I've got my big screen TV. The games on Sunday, and it's always been this way. I mean, we're in a very dangerous spot when it comes to that sort of mindset. But this economic and utilities dependency is very dangerous. So if the economic plug gets pulled, we could see, people can't get money out, then all of a sudden the food starts disappearing. We could see some serious civil chaos. I've warned people about this for years, and I've said, well, I would suggest you get out of any large metropolitan areas and get to higher ground. And I've even said that's why I live in Latin America. I got tired of thinking about that all the time. It had me preoccupied. But not just that aspect, but the police state. I mean, what I do is something that I know they're aware of, and they would love to find a way to, round me up. I said, well, why worry about it? Not that they can't find me here, and I'm not worried about it. I'm not afraid. I've committed my life a long time ago. I'm not afraid of death or anything they can do to me. I'm more afraid of stopping being awake, aware, and active. Or becoming afraid. I'm afraid of becoming afraid, but I'm not. Anyway, but I agree that sense of foreboding, I think it's real. I think it's founded.
Yeah, and I'm talking recently.
No, this vibrational change, and this the blood moon has a lot to do with it.
Okay,
because I think so, because people talk about the 28th and this wave X coming in and this sort of a transcendental empowerment. And I think there's truth to it, but again, we're not looking for a savior. We're not looking for the cavalry to come and rescue us. But there are wonderful elements in the universe. There are, besides these nasties, well, there's good elements and there's good influence, and it's a time to tune into those. But at the same time, if you're getting the sense of foreboding, well, maybe have you taken all the precautions you should? Do you have food and water? Do you know what you would do in the case of a calamity? Very basic preparedness, which should have been taken care of years ago. But people who haven't done that yet, now's the time to do it. You can't keep putting that off. If you wait until something happens, it's too late.
Yeah.
But spiritually speaking, I'm with you, because I think I wouldn't trade this time for anything. I feel honored to be alive during this time. I really do. And I knew something since I looked in the mirror one time, and I think I was 5 years old. And I looked at it. I said, I'm supposed to do something here. I had this sense. This is, there's something going on here, and I'm supposed to do something here. Not that I was special, but there was this sense of, this is an amazing time.
At 5 years old. 5 years old, you had that epiphany.
And I popped in and out of it as I grew up, and I got buried in, high school things and sports, and I went to college, had that wake up, and then I got buried in other stuff, and then I had other wake ups and traveled the world and got buried in other stuff. I talk about these 5 stages of awakening I've been through. I'm sure it's more of a continuum than anything. I was talking with my wife about that today, because David Icke talked about the early 90s when he had his experience, and that's when he was told these truth vibrations, this shift was starting, and there was going to be a crescendo. It was going to keep coming and keep coming. And it was in the early 90s. I was living in Brazil, and I had a major change, but I didn't understand it. I was in the midst of a whole different paradigm, and but it set me into turmoil for the next 10, 15 years, until I finally grasped what it was that was going on, and I went into another stage, and then I popped out. But this vibrational empowerment is no joke. It is for real, and people don't need to think it's woo-woo and all this. Just tune into yourself and find out for yourself, research it for yourself. It's not a knowledge thing. It's more an experiential thing.
Absolutely.
But it comes when we let go. It comes when we're willing to let go of false paradigms or our fear or old concepts. That's the biggie. Because,
absolutely.
Right? Somebody might have studied the Urantia book all their life, or the Bible, and that's how they see the world. Well, it's time to let it go, because it's bigger than that. It's not one teaching from anything. Don't even look for that. Like we were talking about religion. And these are the things that I pound on. I guess you can tell in my writing. It's all about getting free. It's chipping off. They say the awakening is a violent thing. It is getting rid of the old. It is blowing. It is destroying everything old that is false. It's a destructive process in order to release the real. It's like the inside, the chick inside the egg. Well, he's got to bust his way out. The butterfly has to get out of the cocoon. It's a process. The seed has to come out from complete darkness, out of the earth, germinates, and then struggle, and then reach the light. It's part of the process, and we're here for that learning experience.
Well, you and I talked about that. You have such an amazing way of using metaphor and analogy that I think everyone can get. So lucid. Thank you for that. But you and I talked about this whole idea of all of the dark and the ugly that's going on, and certain people will respond once they become privy to it with anger, and it just kind of festers as anger. Others, I think you and I maybe 2 of them, look at this not so much as the bad guys versus the good guys and they got to go, but rather perhaps they're representing, not unbeknownst to them, something that needs to be busted through. In other words, perhaps the universe is putting some of these ills on us in order to show us that we have the ability to bust through them. Hence, that ugly has a very constructive purpose, right?
Yes, that's very well said. It's a process. Clearly, it's a process. What you were talking about just then reminds me of what I consider a profound fact, that anybody who's researched and gone through this awakening and pursued it and kept researching and kept connecting the dots, anybody who's gone through this eventually became profoundly spiritual, not religious. And if you think of the people that you you really respect and admire, that you've watched grow and progress, or that you look to for good information and inspiration. They may or may not have been spiritual before, but going through this process, you eventually punch through. And I like to encourage people in this, that you're going to get through this dark information, but anybody who keeps pursuing, they will break through. They will find, oh my goodness, it's like going through the dark forest in order to get to the clearing. And that dark forest is real. It is nasty. It's full of wild beasts. It could be scary, and there's all kinds of things you never could conceive existed are there, in all kinds of dimensions. But keep going, because you'll see how it all fits together eventually.
I agree. I do agree. I think that seeing how it all fits together now, we've heard so many people talk about what I call occasional epiphanies, or sort of moving into enlightenment and then out of it, and kind of like your 5 stages. That it's a constant back and forth, but at some point it all fits together finally. I say finally, and then as soon as you think it all fits together, there's yet something else to learn. But there comes a maturity of understanding how the puzzle pieces do fit together. And I'm one that has really looked at all of this not just information, because I say, Zen, that understanding the dark and the light can only fully be understood experientially. You can read all you want, and I don't discourage the research and the reading, but rather than letting that be the sole barometer, I say to people, go outside and look around, look on TV, be aware of all of the nuances, and you'll see for yourself without having to pick up one book what's going on. So that is absolutely necessary, as well as silence and the contemplation of the things that you're experiencing. That's when things, I think, really start to fit together. Yeah, I agree. You think about it, two of the concepts, I think, for me, epitomize what you're saying, and the experiential aspect. One of them is intuitive. Like for me, you there? I'm here. Oh, good. Sorry. I'm extremely intuitive. I don't have like super psychic gifts. I mean, on occasion, I don't know. I can't compare to anybody else because I'm not anybody else. But I go by intuition more than anything. Yet I have a very strong mind, very strong intellect, and a very analytical mind. So these kind of work together, and that turns into words, which is why apparently I'm here to write. Is one of my manifestations here. But the other, besides intuition, which is this heart knowledge, the experiential knowledge you're talking about, the other that I think is another fabulous dynamic is empathy. Empathy. Oh, empathy, yes. Compassion and empathy, yeah. Empathy versus all of the mentalized ideas of what, caring, love, I feel sorry, and all this kind of stuff. But real empathy, which, as we know, the psychopaths don't have a shred of, which is what's been manifested around us and why the separated world. But if we can activate those two elements, I'm sure there's more, but to me, those are the most powerful dynamics of what we call the awakening, or this transcendence, or this ascension, or whatever anybody wants to call it. It's and learning to go by this intuition, because it lends itself right into the whole idea of telepathy, where that's the language that I think, that's the lost language that we're slowly rediscovering. You know how it is, and we see it manifest in synchronicity and so-called coincidences. But you'll call somebody and they say, "I was just thinking of you," that kind of a thing. But on the other hand, there's times you can feel someone else in need. And I know several people who know me, and I know them, and we'll have this type of experience very frequently, where just you sense somebody needs a little help, and you send them, good vibes, a prayer, whatever you want to call it, and you just sort of feel them, and you sort of hold them in your arms and send some good vibes, and then you find out later that someone did it for you during a certain time, but you couldn't get in touch or something like that. I think we need to learn to trust these gifts, and let them arise,
And I think there's way cool stuff awaiting our discovery.
I agree.
And I think that's the real, the pioneer field. That's the new frontier of people who are having this experience and and longing for ways to really help effectuate this transition in a meaningful way. I mean, a lot of people they're in their homes. They don't want to hit the street with a banner or go down and bang on the mayor's door, but they want to do something. Their hearts are longing. Well, there is a way. I mean, at the least, we should all be doing that. And if physical action follows, and we do a flash mob, we do a group garden, or we go down and scream about the fracking going on in the neighborhood, which people should do, or the cell towers that are going up right inside of communities. And people should, I think, do something about these. They should go to their local officials and hold them accountable. Because if those guys didn't approve it, it wouldn't be happening.
Right.
So, like we say in the Full Circle Project, well, what's to keep me from holding you accountable and for abusing your authority and having you removed? Because you're supposed to be representing us. So that's a dynamic other people can relate to, even though we know the whole system's false and constructed. Well, if other people can relate to it, at least on that level that maybe don't see this transcendent stuff yet, well, at least gets the juices flowing.
And may actually
talking.
Right, and may actually trigger what I think you're describing is what I'd call inner technology, that ability to leverage, I don't like that word, but we'll say trigger telepathic experiences. We know these are very real as well. I do think it's a balance, and I think eventually I see a time when we will become, we're coming full circle here. We're talking about the use of language and how it can be destructive and instructive. But what if we take that away and now all of our communication is telepathic? I call it true wireless fidelity, frankly, true Wi-Fi, which is inner technology, and I believe it's there. And I'm not the only one. There are many others that have talked about that. You bring up synchronicity. We're winding down. We only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to bring in a couple of things related. You mentioned synchronicity, and the fact that these things clearly, in my experience in talking to others, are more prevalent. People are having Zen more synchronicities. Just today, somebody emailed me and said, Alexis, because I've done a few pieces on the dynamic of synchronicity, which I happen to feel is quite powerful, said to me they're happening every day now, and I'll survey people and who understand what it is, and they'll admit to me, yes, I'm having them more and more. So something is burgeoning and pushing its way through all of this, and people are picking up on it. I think it's quite powerful
and very true. I mean, this is a phenomenon that so many are experiencing. I have an expression: if you're not free to follow life signs and live in synchronicity, you're not free.
Love it.
So what the next step people need to take is disengage, stop the stuff that's holding you back, and follow what you're being shown. And these will step up even more. It'll go exponential.
No question.
But people have to have some guts. They've got to be willing to let go. Maybe there's a quote I put on my site today by Rumi where he says, move to where you're afraid of moving. Be the heretic. Be the step out. Have some guts, because when it comes down to it, our kids and our grandkids are about to become transhuman little robots or exterminated. We are in dire straits. So that is another aspect of this dynamic. It is a time to respond. We've got to rise above this. There is a fuel under our butts to really get, and obviously we shouldn't act in fear. We shouldn't act in, malice and all those things, but we are in a very desperate time within this plane. But spiritually, these dynamics, they're at a parallel place. They transcend this. We don't need to, be dwelling on all this so-called negativity, but it's a reality. So we can use that to take a kick in the butt, to let go of shit. Just let it, learn to try something new, move somewhere. Do what you've always wanted to do, but never had the guts to do it. It's time to cut free. It's time to be the warrior. Let the warrior arise. It's inside each of us, and it's screaming to get out. And I think that's a message a lot of people will relate to and are relating to. And I've been saying this for a while, but I'm not the only one. It's a time to rise in whatever way we're being called. And that means cutting free. That means cutting the rope. It means there's going to be, it looks like a sacrifice, but is it really a sacrifice when you cut the rope and your boat goes out to sea and you discover, paradise? Is that a sacrifice? Mm-hmm. It was only in your mind. Oh, my rope. Oh no, I'm leaving behind my shack on the beach. Hey, come on. Let's wake up here. If you've been having this in your heart, now if you don't want to go, don't go. Fine. But then stop complaining about these feelings you got inside, buddy, about there's something more and I'm not satisfied and I've got to find
Can't
meaning.
have it both ways. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's a powerful note to end it on. We'll put it that way. But, and we're going to need to end it there. Of course, you are welcome back anytime, Zen Gardner, and I hope that you will come back soon so we can continue this dialogue. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell the audience, head to zengardner.com as soon as the show is over and pick up on all the wonderful information and insight he brings us on a regular basis. But aside from zengardner.com, Zen, what else do you have going on right now?
Well, I'm working with a project that I mentioned, fullcircleproject.net, and it's got a feature on it called the Community Connector that people can sign up for. It's not to accumulate names and build anything but local communities. And you can actually go there and see if there's people in your area that have signed up with similar interests, similar passions. It's a great idea put together by a guy named Matt, and we're really proud to have it on the site. And hundreds of people a day are signing up for it. It's something, and we're moving at least in a proactive direction, because as you know, the alternative community tends to be a bit insular. It tends to feed on itself. Mm-hmm. And what we need to do is take this information and the love, the concern we have to a wider audience and reach people that aren't being reached.
Absolutely.
And in a compassionate, understanding way, but also, with energy and concern. But, step out of our little confines, meet people in your neighborhood.
Great.
Yeah, I've been a bit of a hermit myself the last few weeks because I do so much work online, and then I kind of wear myself out. But here there's just wonderful people in our local community, wonderful friends, and we've got the Full Circle Project going here with some great. It breaks into smaller groups where people find their own interests. So it's instead of just having a big group that gets all bogged down.
Right. Well, that's great.
Anyway. That's it. And besides that, I'm as I told you, I'm going to Europe for a couple months, and I've got a few conferences booked for next year.
Excellent. And we'll be able to find all of that on zengardner.com, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll come up and see you.
I think that would be great. I'm going to hold you to that one. Well, listen, it has been a pleasure and just so powerful always to talk to you. Now, we're not going to hang up. We said we're going to do our proper get off the air, and then we will say a proper goodbye. But I just want to say thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight and your zeal, Zen. You can't be beat. Thank you so much, my dear. And
my pleasure. I don't know if I'm being presumptuous, but I can kind of feel your audience, and I much love to everybody listening, and I think things are going to be according to what we make it, but I think we have a lot to look forward to.
Hear, hear. On that note, take care, everyone. Awakening often happens in stages. For Zen, he's been through 5 that he can count so far. With each wave of insight, he's made it a point to trust his inner gifts and make good on them. Qualities like intuition, compassion and empathy, synchronicity, and even telepathy. These are all tools that will undoubtedly help us all walk the path of truth. As we're faced with more and more challenges, we must hold on tight to these inner allies and then rise in whatever way we're being called. One calling for Zen is a project you briefly heard about called the Full Circle Project, and I urge you to visit that website, which we've listed below this interview, as well as Zen's own home online, which is simply zengardner.com. I thank you for joining me on this journey with Zen and for tuning in to Higher Journeys Radio. I'm your host, Alexis Brooks.